People are leveraged with over $1.2 trillion in margin debt. In other words, we've got a ton of leverage out there. People are borrowing money left and right to pile into this market. A ton of retail investors have come in right here near the market highs, which is setting up for basically either one of two scenarios. Either a massive, massive sell-off, like I just talked about in a separate video the other day, talking about upwards of a 33% plunge in the S&P 500, or we see a blow-off top in the market where we see a huge, huge, huge move higher and then a huge, 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 huge move lower. Well, I also have this article right here. I'm going to pop this up on the screen in just a second so you can see and read for yourself exactly what they're talking about. This is pretty interesting. The markets are very fascinating to me. I watch the markets very closely all day, every single day. And when I see stuff like this, I think it to be very, very interesting, especially with the volatility that we've seen recently and some of the indicators that are out there, like the $1.2 trillion of margin debt that people have right now, retail investors and traders piling right here near the all-time highs, the Dow that is outperforming the other indices, which is honestly a huge, huge red flag, in my opinion, when people are going to defensive names and big blue chip names like what are included in the Dow. Things when you see things like that, to me, that looks like people are moving away from tech, which again is underperforming the Nasdaq. But anyway, let's pop this up right here. Here's the article. Feel free to read through the details on this. This is actually very, very interesting. So they have this proprietary panic index. Apparently, it's out of 10. And as of last week, it breached 9.2. It actually topped out at 9.22, this panic index. Okay, well, this is almost all out fear. Now, obviously, all out fear would be a perfect reading of 10. So we're like very close to that. We're only 0.78 away from all out fear, according to this panic index within Goldman Sachs. Now, obviously, we can't just look at one indicator and be like, oh, that's it. This is going to be it. But it is something we certainly want to watch, at least it's an interesting talking point and something we probably want to pay a little bit of attention to. Now, what's interesting about this is that they indicated that this could actually trigger up to $33 billion worth of selling because of the algorithms, right? Remember, a lot of the trading that takes place within the markets is just algorithms, computers that are trading tons and tons of transactions every single day. And, obviously millions and millions and millions of shares, they're moving just tons of money through the system, through these algorithms. What they're basically saying is that a lot of these algorithms received last week sell signals to start unloading their shares, unloading their positions, and they're saying that this could actually trigger up to $33 billion worth of selling starting this week. And then if it continues, and if the S&P were to drop down and breach 6,707, as you can see there in the article, 6,707, they're indicating that that could actually indicate the algorithms to drop $80 billion over the coming weeks here in total. So that would be, a pretty good amount of money that they're selling. But I also just read another report today that apparently so much activity in the markets has been taking place as of recently that we are now breaching $1 trillion trading hands every day in the markets. Again, that's nuts, right? $1 trillion a day of basically money just trading hands just in the markets in the few hours that the markets are open during regular market hours. That's a lot of money.